Okay, so today we are working on lessons 7-5 and 7-6. There's a little bit of a variation between each lesson, and as we go through the lesson, I'll explain what that is. So, one thing that we have been doing is I'm gonna cover up the notes for just a second to show you something. Is we have been taking two binomials that might look something like this. Okay. And we have been distributing the first binomial to the second binomial to get what we call a trinomial. And so I'm just going to do that really quick. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times -4 is -8x. 5 times x is positive 5x. And 5 times -4 is -20. And then we have combined our like terms. This was the last lesson that we did. And so we end up with 2x squared minus 3x minus 20. Okay, so we've learned how to do that. Now what we're going to do is we are going to learn how to factor this so that we go from this back to that. And we call that factoring a trinomial. Okay. There are two types of trinomials that we are going to be factoring today. We're going to be factoring trinomials that look something like, maybe, let's see, something like that. Oops, you can't see it. Something like this, where your coefficient for A is 1. And then we're going to be factoring trinomials that look something like this, where our coefficient in front of the x squared is something other than 1. Okay, so those are the two different types of trinomials that we are going to be factoring. This one, where we have a coefficient of 1, is going to be fairly simple. You're going to catch on pretty quick. But when we get up to this, it might take you a couple of tries to get used to the method of factoring those. So let's go ahead and get started with our notes. Okay, so when you're factoring trinomials, here are some steps that you want to take, and this is when you have a starting coefficient of 1. Make sure your trinomial is ordered from greatest degree to least degree, and I will say on our notes that has been done for you already. Number 2, determine the factors of the product of the first and the third term. Okay, so in this case, our first and third term here is going to be 18. And when it says determine the factors of the product, that means what you're doing is you're multiplying your first term times your third term, and you get 18 because this is a 1 right here. Oops. So you're going to multiply these two terms out, and you get 18. So that's the product, which product means multiplication of the first and the third term. Step 3, determine which of those factors from step 2 will combine to get the second term. What does that mean? So you're going to list all the factors of 18. Okay. And so I have, and this is a positive 18. So 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Those are all of the factors of 18. And the step 3 tells us to determine which of those factors, so which of these right here that we have, will combine to get the second term, meaning we'll add or subtract up to get the second term. So basically what that means is we're trying to figure out which of these factors will add up to 9. Okay, well, you can probably already see that it's 3 and 6 here. So 3 and 6 will total our 9. So how do we write that out? Well, we write it out like this. X plus 3 times X plus our second term, 6. And it's as easy as that. That's our final answer. Okay. So we are, and I'm just going to recap just a little bit. We are determining the factors of 18 times 1, 18, that add up to 9. Those two factors go into the two binomials, and we have factored out this trinomial. Now, if you wanted to, you could go back and FOIL this. So let me show you what happens when we FOIL it. X times X is X squared. I said FOIL, I meant distribute. X times 6 is 6X. 3 times X is 3X. And 3 times 6 is 18. And then we combine our like terms, and we end up with X squared plus 9X plus 18. You check it with this up here, and that is correct. So that means that your factored out terms are correct. X plus 3 times X plus 6. Okay. All right, I want to go down to example 2. I'm going to be doing the examples with you on this page, and then you will be doing the practice on your own just to check to make sure you are understanding the concept. Okay, so let's go down to example 2. We may need to see another couple to get the hang of this. All right, I'm going to find factors of 4 times 1, factors of 4 that will combine to get a -5. So now we have a negative number involved here. So I'm going to go ahead and list my factors of 4. We have 1 and 4, and we have 2 and 3. Oops, I meant 2 and 2. I'm sorry. Like, that is not going to work out. Okay. So one thing that students will a lot of times miss is the factor of 1. You never want to forget the factor of 1, okay? Because sometimes you'll be working out a problem and you can't think of the right factor because you've forgotten to say, okay, well, 1 times that number, those are factors. So I know that 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 minus 2 is 0, -2 plus a -2 is a -4. None of that is going to work. So I know that my terms are going to have to be 1 and 4, but notice that this is a -5. What that means is that 1 and 4 both have to be negative, and we have a -1 times a -4 gives us a +4, and we have a -1 plus a -4, which gives us a -5. So just to reiterate, these two factors have to multiply to get 4, and then add up or subtract to get this middle term. Okay, so let's go ahead and put these into the binomial. It's going to be X minus 1, because that's a negative, times X minus 4. Now, again, if you would like to check to make sure that you've factored it out correctly, you can distribute the first binomial to the second binomial to check your work. So I have X times X is X squared. X times -4 is -4X. -1 times X is -1X. And -1 times a -4 is a +4. Combine your like terms, and we have X squared minus 5X plus 4. That does match this up here, so that would be correct. Now, a lot of students ask, do I need to check every answer? And the answer for me is no, you don't. But if you're questioning whether it is correct or not, you might want to run through that process to check your work. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. So this time we are going to find factors of -10. Why -10? Because we have a -10 times this 1 right here. And we need factors of -10 that are going to get us a +3. So let's write our -10 right here. And let's list out all of our factors. We have 1 and 10. Now notice I'm not putting my negatives there yet because I want to show you how to determine which one will be negative when we do this. We have 2 and 5. Okay, so in looking at this, I could clearly see 1 and 10 is not going to be the answer, and it's going to have to be 2 and 5. All right, now because 10 is a negative number, we have to have one of the factors be negative, because 2 times 5 is a +10. And a -2 times a -5 is a +10. But if one of these were negative, it would give us a -10 when we multiplied them together. So let's look up here at our 3. Our 3 is positive. So when we add our 2 and our 5, we have to figure out, okay, which one of them is going to be the negative and which one is going to be the positive? Well, if 5 were negative, 2 minus 5 is a -3. But if 2 were negative, -2 plus 5 is a +3. So basically, if this middle term, we call it the B term, if it's positive, your smaller number will be negative. But if it's negative, your larger number will be negative. And that's just some number sense that that you need in order to be able to quickly figure these out. So now we're going to plug these into two binomials. So we have x minus 2 times x plus 5. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and look at example 4. Now we have two negatives here that we're going to be working with. So in this one, we want factors of -8 that will give us a -7. So let's list the factors of 8. We have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. So 2 and 4 will give me a 6 or a 2, positive or negative, okay? But a 1 and an 8, when I subtract them, will give me a 7. So I know it's going to be 1 and 8. And since 7 is negative, that means my larger number here, my 8 has to be negative, because 1 minus 8 gives me a -7. So I'm going to plug those in. X plus 1, x minus 8. And we have factored this trinomial. Okay. All right, so what I would like for you to do now, if you're watching this video, I'd like you to go ahead and pause it, and I want you to do the 4 practice problems on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and continue recording and going through these practice problems. So if you want to try them on your own, go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so I'm going to factor this. So I'm going to list my factors of 6. And I have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And it just so happens that both of these can give us a 5. But it's a matter of which two will add up to get a +6 and a +5. And it's the 2 and the 3. Okay. And since both of these are positive up here, then both of my answers will be positive. So x plus 2 times x plus 3. And if you want to go ahead and distribute that out to double check your work, you can. Okay, for practice 2, we're going to find factors of 15. So 6, 1 times 15. And I have 1 and 15. That I already can tell that's not going to be it. And I have 3 and 5. Now that makes sense because 3 and 5 will give me an 8. But this is a -8. And the product here is positive. If your product is positive, these two numbers either have to both be positive or both be negative. Well, since our middle term is negative, that means that both of those are going to be negative. Okay. So we have x minus 3. -3 minus 5 is a -8. -3 times a -5 is +15. X minus. All right, let's move on to practice 3. We need factors of 54 that will give us a 3. So we have 1 and 54. We have 2 and 27. We have 3 and 18. Yep. 4 and nothing, 5 and nothing, 6 and 9. 7 and nothing, 8 and nothing, and we're back at 9, so I can stop. These are all the factors. Oh, sorry, you can't see my screen. These are all the factors of 54. And when I go down my factors, I have 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times 18. I know 4 times nothing and 5 times nothing give me 54. 6 times 9, 7 times nothing, 8 times nothing. And when I hit a number that I already have up here, I know that I'm done. So I've gotten down to 9, but I already have that here. Okay. So I know this isn't going to give me a 3 or this one or this one. It's the 6 and the 9. Now notice that it has to be a negative 54 here. I forgot to put my negative there earlier. So that means one of these has to be negative. Since my middle term is positive, these have to add up to a positive number, meaning my 9 stays positive and my 6 becomes negative. Negative 6 plus 9 is a positive 3. Negative 6 times 9 is a negative 54. Okay, and there you have it. All right, let's do this last one on this page. All right, I need factors of negative 30 that are going to get me a negative 7. Now I'm looking at this and I already know it's going to be 3 and 10. So if you get to the point where you don't need to list all your factors and you can already see it, good. That saves you a little bit of more time. Sometimes though, we don't see it right away and we need to list all of those factors out. So I know that this has to be a negative. And I know my middle term is negative. That means my larger number has to be a negative. Okay. So I'm going to have x plus 3 times x minus 10. All right. So this was basically the 7-5 portion of the lesson. We're now going to move on to the 7-6 portion. Okay. And the difference in this part is that your coefficient here is something other than 1. On the back side, they were all 1. So let's look at our steps up here. It says, make sure your trinomial is ordered from greatest degree to least degree. On this page, they are. If you can factor out a GCF, we have 1 on this page where we're going to do that. That would be, and I'm going to put a star so I don't forget, but that's going to be practice 7 right here. Okay. And I only have 1 on this. We're going to get to another lesson where we do it a lot, where we pull out the GCF. Step 3, determine the factors of the product of the first and third term. That's the same that we had on the other set. So what does that look like right here? We're going to determine the factors of the first and third term. This time it's 2. We have a coefficient here, so 2 times 5. So I'm going to find factors of 10 that add up to 7. And that's our 4th step. Okay, so let's go ahead and list out our factors here. We have 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Well, I already know 2 plus 5 equals 7 and 2 times 5 equals 10. So these are our factors. Now this is where we would just plug it into our answer and we'd be done. However, because there is a coefficient other than 1 here, we have to solve this differently. So what we're going to do is we are going to take these 2 terms, 2 and 5, and we're going to replace them where the 7x is. So this is going to get replaced with 2x plus 5x. So let me show you how that works. We bring down our 2x squared. This comes down now in the form of 2x plus 5x because 2x plus 5x equals 7x. So we're replacing this term, this middle term, with the factors of 10 that equal 7. All right. And then we just bring back down this 5. So we're rewriting the whole thing, but replacing the 7x with its 2 factors here. All right, so now this is where we start to see a little bit of variation. Step 5, cut the polynomial down the middle and factor each side. When it says cut the polynomial down the middle, that's kind of what they did up in this example. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to put parentheses around the first two terms, and then we're going to put parentheses around the second two terms. Okay, that's what it means. And we're going to factor each side. So we group them, and now we're going to factor them. So I'm going to factor this first set. So I need to look at this and say, okay, what is the greatest common factor between 2x squared and 2x? And I can see that it is 2x. So we're going to divide both of these by 2x. And this is how this works. This 2x goes on the outside, what we're dividing them by, or what we're factoring out. And then what's left goes in a set of parentheses. So 2x squared divided by 2x is x. And this is going back to chapter 5, where we learned about the exponent rules. So you should know that x squared divided by x is x, because you subtract the exponents. And then 2x divided by 2x, a lot of students get this mixed up. It is not 0, and we don't get rid of it. It just becomes a 1. Okay. So we factored out the first set. Now we're going to factor out the second set. Now the greatest common factor between 5x and 5 is 5, and it's going to be positive 5. So I'm going to put plus 5 here. And we are dividing both of these by 5. So 5x divided by 5 is x. 5 divided by 5 is a positive 1. Okay. Oh, on my end, my video paused. So I'm going to stop my screen and reshare. So give me just a second. Okay. So I factored out both of these terms. Now you're going to notice that these two terms are the same. So what we have factored out of this whole thing is an x plus 1. And now what we do, is we are going to take 2x plus 5, and that becomes one binomial. And then x plus 1 becomes our second binomial. And that is your answer. If these two are not the same when you're done factoring, then you went wrong somewhere. Something is wrong. Either you didn't factor out the greatest common factor, or this should be a negative, or something like that. So, and we'll get to some of those examples, but you might want to go back and check to make sure that your factors up here are right, and that you factored out the greatest common factor and you did your factoring here correctly. And then if you want to go back to make sure that you did this right, you can distribute out and see if you come back with this right here. So let me just do that really quick. Yeah, I did it quickly in my head. Okay, let's go down to example 6. Again, I'm going to do the examples and then you're going to do the practice. Okay. Now what we have to do on this one is, first step, find the product of the first and third term. 6 times 3 is 18. And then list your factors out. And then figure out which set of factors gives you a negative 11. Because that's a negative, I know my bigger number is going to be a negative. So I can put a negative here. Actually, this is positive, so they all have to be negative. All right, so which one is going to add up to a negative 11? That's going to be this one right here. So if you're questioning me, like, why are both of them negative? Well, because a negative 2 times a negative 9 gives me a positive 18. And a negative 2 times, or plus a negative 9 is a negative 11. Okay. If only one of them were negative, then that 18 would have to be negative, and it isn't, because that's a positive 6 times a positive 3. Okay, so this is where you may have forgotten, okay, what do I do next? Next, you're just going to replace your negative 2 and your negative 9 where the negative 11 is. So you get rid of the negative 11 and just swap those in. So we would write it as 6x squared. And then I'm going to take my first term minus 2x minus 9x plus the 3. Okay, so this, and that. Okay, you're just bringing those down. Okay, now I am going to group them. And when you group them, make sure you take in the sign that is in front of the numbers. So this 9 had a negative, so bring the negative with it into the group. And I'll show you why in just a second. All right, so the greatest common factor between 6x squared and 2x is 2x. Okay, so let's take that 2x out and put it here, and then go ahead and do your dividing. 6x squared divided by 2x, 6 divided by 2 is 3, x squared divided by x is x. And then you have a negative 2x divided by 2x, which gives you a negative 1. Okay. Now we have negative 9x plus 3. The greatest common factor here is a 3. However, because the 9 is negative here, your first term here is negative, you want to take out a negative 3. So basically, you're going to take out either a positive or a negative based on what this first term is right here in this group. Okay. So I'm going to take out a negative 3. Negative 9x divided by negative 3 is a positive 3x. Positive 3 divided by a negative 3 is a negative 1. So these right here are both the same, so I did it correctly. Now, if instead of pulling out a negative 3 and I pulled out a positive 3, then in here I'd have a negative 3x plus 1, and that wouldn't match here. Okay, so that's why it's important to pull out that negative if you need to. All right, our final answer here is 2x minus 3 times 3x minus 1. All righty. I am going to do example 7. Actually, I'm going to do practice 7 because example 7 is sort of like what's up here. Practice 7, we have to do a little differently because we have to take out a greatest common factor first and then do all of that extra work. So I want to be sure to do this one with you. All right, if you can, in a trinomial, if you can take out a common factor between all three, you should. In this case, the common factor is 2. Okay. So I'm going to take out a 2 and just rewrite the whole thing. So I have 2 times 6 divided by 2 is 3, x squared, 8 divided by 2, 4x, and negative 8 divided by 2 is a negative 4. And now I'm solving this like I would all the others. There's no difference. Okay. Now you're not going to have to do this on any other problem. So you don't have to worry about that. But right now we're just going to factor this out like we did up top. So we're going to find factors here of a negative 12 because we have a 3 times a negative 4 that add up to a positive 4. Now, since this is a positive and this right here is a negative, I know that my smaller number is going to be negative. So I'm just going to put a negative in front of all the smaller numbers. And I can see that negative 2 plus 6 is going to give me a positive 4 right here. Okay. So those are the factors that are going to replace the 4 right here. Okay. So we write everything else out just like it is. 2 times 3x squared minus 2x, I took my negative 2x over here, plus 6x minus 4. Okay. Now I'm going to group. So I have this group and I have this group. And now I'm going to take out the greatest common factors. Now in this one, there is no coefficient that is the greatest common factor. The only factor that you could take out of both of them is the x. So I'm going to take out an x here. So what does that look like? Now over here, we can't forget this 2. I'm just going to write this 2 over here in a parentheses. And actually, I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to run out of space. Write a little bit smaller. 3x squared divided by, oh, I'm sorry, we need our x out here. And then we can divide 3x squared divided by x is 3x. 2x divided by x is 2. That's a negative 2. And now we have to factor out the greatest common factor between 6 and 4, which is 2. And it's going to be a positive 2. So we have a positive 2 times 6 divided by 2 is 3, and we can't forget our x. Negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. And these are the same. That tells me I most likely did this correctly. So now how do we write our final answer when we have this GCF sitting out here? We write it like this. 2 times x plus 2 times 3x. Oh, that should be a minus 2. I'm sorry. 3x. Oh, I'm sorry. I messed that up. It's 2. No, I did that right. I apologize. So 2 times x plus 2 times 3x minus 2. That one was a little bit tricky just because of that additional step. All right, I'm going to do example 8, and then you'll do the 4 remaining on the page that I did not do with you. All right, so we're going to find factors of 3 times the negative 4. So factors of negative 12 that give us a negative 11. All right. So since this is negative and that is negative, I know that one of these needs to be negative. So since my larger number is negative, my larger number here needs to be negative. And so we're going to have a positive 1 and a negative 12. So we're going to substitute that in where the negative 11 is. So we have 3x squared plus 1x minus 12x minus 4. Now, you could have swapped the positive 1x and the negative 12x if you wanted to. They don't have to go in this order. They can flip if you want to. And it actually would have been easier to do it that way. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it. All right, this one, I can only factor out an x. This one, I'm going to factor out a negative, because my first term is negative, a negative 4. Okay. So we have an x here, left with a 3x plus 1. Here we have a negative 4, and we're left with a 3x plus 1. Negative 12 divided by negative 4 is a positive 3. Negative 4 divided by a negative 4 is a 1. And we can write our final answer. All right. All right. Okay. If you have this and you are ready to try some on your own, please do so. I'm going to go back up to the top, starting with practice 5, and I'm going to go ahead and work through all of these so you can see them. But like I said, if you want to try them on your own without me, please do so. And then you can come back and fast forward the video and check your answers. Okay. And so I'll go a little bit quicker on these. So on this one, we need to find factors of 3 times 12, so 36, that give us a positive 13. Okay. I can see it here. It's going to be the 4 and the 9, and since they're both positive, they'll both be positive. And when I say they're both positive, my product is positive and my sum is positive. Okay, so I'm going to replace those with the 13x. I'm going to replace the 13x with those. So 3x squared. Okay, and now I'm going to group. And I'm going to factor. Okay. And can factor out an x in the first set. So that becomes x times 3x plus 4. I can factor out a 3 in the second set. And so that becomes 3x plus 4. So my answer is x plus 3 times 3x plus 4. Okay, let's move on to practice 6. I don't have a GCF, but so I'm going to find factors of 15 times 4, which is 60, that add up to a 23. So I'm skipping 1 and 60. That's a given. It's not 1 and 60, right? 3 and 20. Oh, look at that. It's got to be 3 and 20. And it looks like, because this is positive and that's negative, they're both going to be negative. Negative 3 times negative 20 is a positive 60. Negative 3 plus a negative 20 is a negative 23. So let's substitute these two terms in for negative 23. Now, what am I going to divide them by? The only common factor between 4x squared and 3x is x. And the only common factor between a negative 20 and a 15 is a negative 5. Why negative? Because the first term is negative. Okay, and those two are the same. So we factored out correctly. So now let's put this together. We have x minus 5 times 4x minus 3. Okay, I'm going to move on to example 7 here, and we're finding factors of negative 12 that give us a positive 4. I feel like we've done that one before. 2 and 6. And 2 has to be negative. Pretty sure we did that one before. Maybe on the other side. All right, let's plug negative 2 and 6 in and replace the 4x. So we have 4x squared minus 2x plus 6x minus 3. And now we're going to group. So we multiplied, we listed factors, we substituted, we're grouping, now we're factoring. So the greatest common factor between 4x squared and 2x is a 2x. And the greatest common factor between 6x and negative 3 is a 3. So let's take those out and divide. Okay, those terms are the same. So now we have 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 1. Great. Let's do the last one on this page. By the time you finish this page, we should have this down. We're doing so many. All right, so we have factors of 2 times negative 20, that's a negative 40, and they need to add up to a negative 3. So I know 5 and 8 will give us a 3 somehow. So since 3 is negative, my bigger number has to be negative, so that 8 is going to be negative. So 5 times a negative 8 gives me a negative 40. 5 minus 8 gives me a negative 3. So those two factors work out. And so now I'm going to plug those in and replace the negative 3x. And now I'm going to find the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor is X in the first set and -4 in the second set. So a lot of students might say it's -2, and then they'll get an answer that is still factorable. And so if you get to that point, then that means you didn't take out the greatest common factor. Let's write this out. We have X times 2X plus 5 and -4 times 2X plus 5. Okay. All right. Page 2 done. And now we are going to go to the last page, which only has 2 problems, just some word problems that you might see on your homework, or ones that are similar to your homework. All right. So the area of a rectangular door is given by the trinomial x squared minus 14x plus 45. And the door's width is x minus 9. What is the door's length? Okay. So here's our door. The area is, I'm going to turn this to the side, x squared minus 14x plus 45. Okay. And the width is x minus 9. So basically, you have to factor this out. You're dividing these. That's actually what you're doing. You're dividing them. Another way to say it is that you're factoring them. So let's take x squared minus 14x plus 45, and let's factor it out. Notice this coefficient is 1, so we don't even have to do the whole grouping part. We just say, okay, well, factors of 45, that give us a -14. How about 5 and 9? Make them both negative. So we end up with x minus 5 times x minus 9. Well, if the width is x minus 9, then the length is x minus 5. Okay. Okay. I'm going to pause the video real quick, and I'm going to change this up. Actually, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and skip example 10 for right now. This is a different problem where we need to do more factoring than what is actually in this lesson. So we're going to be done with lesson 7-5 and 7-6. If you have any questions, please make sure you attend help class or email me. And that is it. That's all we have for today.